Okay, so now that we have this material set up with our image textures, we can add in any material textures we want. So most materials, or most of these texture packs that you get from like Polyhaven or anything like that, most of them will come with a bunch of different materials. So we could go in and add a wholly different material. So if we try and go to this other, same one, maybe we go into this other material, this other metal material here, we can just immediately switch our maps over. So we'll go for roughness to roughness. Oh, no, that's the metallic map, so that'll be wrong. Let me open up the met map. And you should be able to identify which map goes where based on the little like suffix after the name of the texture. So rough will be, met will be the metallic map or metalness map. Rough will be the roughness map. So you can just kind of replace these as you want, and some of them will have more maps for certain things, and some of them will have fewer maps because there aren't as many parameters to control. What are we on to? Roughness. Here we go. Open that one, and then the normal map here as well. And you'll find like you can just mix and match different maps from different sets if that's what you want, or if that's the result that you want. We'll add in the normal map there. So now we kind of have this nice different map here, and we can still play around with the parameters and the intensity of some of these parameters to get the exact texture and the exact results that we want. So understanding how this flow of flow of data works, where we're defining our texture coordinate system, so how we are mapping this to our surface, and how we can control that map by, say, rotating that map around to achieve different results. Like maybe we want to stretch this metal across a certain axis to give us almost like a brushed metal look, like clamping or like really pushing the scale to get ourselves these interesting interesting looks on our materials. Sure, like this isn't necessarily the most practical use of materials, but it can have really interesting visual results, and it can almost prompt you for making different kinds of different calls about how you actually process your materials in real life. Like, you can prototype how brushed metal is going to look on an object versus some other form of metal, or it can encourage you to try and find these interesting patterns when you are creating surface finishes on your actual materials, and allowing you to experiment really quickly and easily with different finishes and different results for your materials. So yeah, hopefully that's a good kind of primer on how you might set up your material maps, and so that you can understand like what's happening when you're bringing in materials from BlenderKit or from other outside sources. One last thing that might be helpful as well, let's just reset all of these to 1, is that if you are really struggling to find a good mapping on the surface, you can always project the texture from the camera. So I'll plug that in so you can see what's kind of happening here. So what this is going to do, what this texture coordinate camera is going to do, is it's going to project basically the texture as a square. So that square of the square maps that we see, like especially if we jump into our UV editor, and we select like our color map here, if we see this kind of this square, which all our texture is always going to be square because that's kind of how this like texturing process, that's kind of one of the formal conventions, I guess, of texture mapping. It's going to project that texture as a square. Oh, it's not going to show me my overlays, of course. There we go. Yeah, it's going to project that texture as a square across across the camera view, or it's probably more likely going to be projected as a square within like fit to the longest edge of the texture view there. And that can be really helpful if you're really struggling with seams or visible issues in your texture maps and you're not too worried about consistency across images. Let me just turn off those annotations. Where did they go? Tool, view, annotations. Just delete those. Yeah, so this projected view, jumping back to shader editor, this camera projection means that as you move around, you're going to see that same texture projected to the surface, whatever angle you're on. But it does mean that you're going to have kind of like less issues in terms of like seams, but you may have more issues if you're trying to move from one, trying to have a consistent texture look from one render to another, because anytime you move your camera, the texture is going to change across the surface. Let's just take that strength way back because it's a little much. But yeah, so hopefully that's a good example of how this texturing process works. In the next video, I might just do some procedural texturing, and you can kind of get an idea for how that works as well.